I want to tell you a story. It's from the early 2000s, and it's kind of part music history, part urban legend. It's about Panda Bear, from the legendary band Animal Collective, who at the height of his creative powers just packed up and moved. But not to LA or Berlin, he moved to Lisbon, Portugal.
Now, we all know this story, right? It's the classic tale. An artist moves to a new city, gets inspired, and boom, their work is totally transformed. It's a great narrative, for sure, but in this case, it's only half the picture. Because what often gets missed, what happens in the quiet moments between the big album releases and the magazine interviews, well, that's where something way more interesting is happening.
And that is what we're going to dig into. We're going to flip that classic story on its head. Because this isn't just about what Lisbon did for Panda Bear. It's about how the quiet, almost invisible presence of one person can act as a silent catalyst and actually start to reshape the creative DNA of an entire city.
So, let's start at the very beginning. Why Lisbon, of all places? What was Noah Lennox, that's Panda Bear's real name, even looking for when he decided to leave the non-stop chaos of New York City?
See, this wasn't some big career move. It wasn't about plugging into a new scene or chasing a trend. The reasons were actually deeply personal. It was about love and family and just finding a totally different rhythm for his life. He was really just looking for a place to get away from the pressure cooker of New York, a place where he could just create.
And this quote just says it all. This is what he found. Not a spotlight, not more fame, but the exact opposite. Lisbon gave him, in his own words, the perfect creative anonymity, the freedom to just be a person first, a dad, a guy who surfs, someone you might see at a cafe, and a world-famous musician second. And that freedom, well, it became the foundation for absolutely everything that was about to happen next.
Okay, so the pressure's off. He has his anonymity. What does he find? Well, think of Lisbon less like a city and more like a giant canvas, just full of these sensory and emotional colors that started to seep into his work.
And what's so fascinating is how these things were both, physical and psychological. You've got stuff you can literally see and feel, like Lisbon's famous bright Atlantic light. But then you've got these intangible moods, a warm melancholy, a deep oceanic calm, and this culture of modesty that was just the total opposite of New York's hustle. These weren't just background details, they were becoming the actual ingredients for his music.
So how does that actually work? How does an abstract feeling like Atlantic light literally become a sound you can hear on a record? This is the alchemist's lab. This is where the city goes from being an experience to becoming a sonic signature.
Okay, just look at this. It's maybe the clearest example you could find. On the left, that's his sound before Lisbon. The reverb on his voice is deep, it's dense, it's like he's singing in a dark cave. But after he moves, after soaking in that Lisbon light, the sound literally changes. The reverb gets shorter, wider, more luminous. It's like he walked out of the cave and onto a Miradouro, one of Lisbon's famous scenic lookout points, totally open to the light and the city.
And it wasn't just the light. He started surfing at Carcavelos beach, and that totally rewired how he thought about rhythm. He realized the ocean doesn't work on a grid, right? It's not a drum machine. First, there's the wait, that silent preparation between sets. Then the cycle itself isn't regular. It's this undulating, non-metric loop. And finally, the melodies. They don't just end. They dissolve, like foam, washing up on the sand. This natural, oceanic pulse became a huge part of his new sound.
But if you boil it all down, maybe the most profound shift was this. Lisbon gave him a new relationship with quiet. A local writer captured it perfectly. He said, Lisbon taught him how silence speaks. His music wasn't about filling up all the space anymore. It became about valuing the pauses, the breath, the space between the notes.
All right, so we've seen how Lisbon completely changed the artist. Now for the really interesting part. Let's flip the camera around and look at the echo he created back into the city. That quiet but incredibly powerful ripple effect of his presence.
So here's this guy, making globally acclaimed, groundbreaking music from his home studio in Lisbon. And that sent a powerful message to local artists. It was this idea some have called creative decolonization. It was proof. It was this quiet manifesto that you did not have to be in New York or London to create something world-class and innovative. You could do it from right there. And psychologically, for the local scene, that was huge.
And its impact wasn't just, symbolic. This chart shows what we could call the invisible economy of art.
This stuff wasn't happening in press releases. It was informal jam sessions in his studio. It was conversations about gear and sampling techniques. It was him casually mentioning local Portuguese artists he liked in international interviews. Each one of these small, quiet actions created a real, tangible reaction. New production techniques started to spread. And slowly but surely, Lisbon started getting put on the global indie map.
And you could actually hear the result in the city's soundscape. You started to see local musicians and producers picking up on these ideas. Things like using the human voice as just another texture in the mix, or adopting a more intuitive, spiritual approach to sampling. Suddenly, it was okay to have lo-fi imperfections in your art. And you saw this new fusion of weird, experimental sounds with beautiful pop melodies. This brighter, more luminous kind of psychedelia that just felt new. So you take all that, the new techniques, the new confidence, the new sounds, and it all adds up to something so much bigger. We're not left with one person's story. We're left with two intertwined legacies, a shared identity that remade both the artist and the city he called home.
When you really look at the legacy of all this, it boils down to one simple, powerful outcome.
And that is that Panda Bear, along with his collaborator Sonic Boom, helped turn Portugal into this unexpected, totally vital hub for modern psychedelic music. This final quote just sums up the whole beautiful symbiotic relationship. Portugal taught him time, he gave us back sound. The country offered him its unique, slower rhythm, and in return, he gave it, and all of us, a whole new sonic language.
And that kind of leaves us with a final thought to chew on. This whole story happened quietly, right? It was all under the radar. And it really makes you wonder, who are the silent catalysts shaping the culture of your city right now? What quiet movements, what invisible connections are changing the place you live in ways you might not even see yet?